All right, so I did a lecture video. So we're on Sprint 2 week 2. Just slugging forward. I did a lecture video on the assignment that you're expected to deliver for Sprint 2, the design document, another major part of the prototype. I got up a sample of the design doc, and I'll have to get up the sample of the prototype next weekend. But then I moved on and did a lecture video on learning objectives and how to break down a professionally built lesson into a series of like explaining statements, and each statement should be like a sentence long, and that's like a nice good nugget of knowledge that you need to focus on per step for the user. I posted up a link to CS Unplugged to the binary numbers lesson, and that's where I pulled my information from for binary counting. And then I posted up the C'Spresso high fidelity walkthrough video, and this link goes to 5 minutes in. And that's where I just spend like 10 minutes explaining the tutorial of why I built the tutorial the way I did, how I had to think about guiding the user through VR. What do I have to teach them about this platform while I'm teaching them about binary counting, the learning. So I'm teaching about the technology they're using, the software that the user is interacting with. I teach them how to use it as I'm laying down those initial learning objectives for the lesson. All right, I also, the video I'm currently recording will go like right here, and underneath will be the Bubble Sort GitHub repo, because I'm going to be moving on to discussing the code in Unity for Bubble Sort. I probably have to do a video all on user interfaces in Unity. I think I'm going to make a note. I think after this video, I'm done for the week, because it's going to take you a good part of the week to just focus on laying out those learning objectives in a list. And it's going to take a lot longer than you think. Breaking down knowledge into self-contained nuggets is a very difficult thing to do. So I'll leave you alone for the week with the learning objectives. I'm just going to spend some time exposing you to the initial steps of the code base. And next week is, I kind of move the videos here. I think I'm going to let me just make a quick note so that I can go into Canvas, and I'm going to have a lot of talk on Unity UI and 3D that'll really take up this week after it. But in any case, this link goes to the Quest Computer Science Education prototype. And as you can see here, I just, I'm building, I got my last commit 5 minutes ago, and it's creating a WebGL build scene for teaching purposes. So here's all the code if you care to look at it, but I'm going to be going through step by step for those who are following me. So this is what it looks like in Unity. Yes, it's using the long-term support of 2018. So the last stable build of 2018. And you guys will be working 2019, so there's some slight different looks to Unity's user interface and how they're handling prefabs, but nothing crazy. Since this project is kind of archived in Unity 2018, it's really not worth me doing the effort to upgrade 2019 because I might break stuff. It's mostly a VR project, and I'm just kind of building this WebGL scene. Like, I built the WebGL scene, basically it's the VR scene. It just has this WebGL user stuff here. I'll cover this, but I didn't have it as like an official scene, so I went ahead and did that. Make this scene just for teaching, but I don't want to move the whole project to 2019 because it's dependent on a lot of Oculus APIs or libraries of code that I don't think upgrading the project to 2019 would go well, and I think a lot of stuff would break, and it wouldn't be worth it for this class. So I'm going to show you the code in 2018, but eventually I have to carry this. I have to like kind of section off or port over part of this project into my prototype, that scene that we built where it's got that intro and the tutorial in level 1. So eventually I'll just be carrying this project over to 2019, but what have you. It is what it is. So anyway, if I zoom out, you can see that this is indeed the scene that we see here in the game view. And I should probably, I feel like I posted up the WebGL, the HIO link, but if not, I'll have to do that too. But anyway, I click play, and I'm moving this hand model. It's because it's supposed to simulate what the user would be doing in VR. So since this is a demonstration of a VR app, it makes sense for me to have this hand model, and you push stuff down into it. So for yours, I mean, if you're following along with me, you'll build this as is. But if you're doing a unique project, more than likely it'll be mostly in 2D, unless you've already have some experience exploring 3D. But let me say that moving from 2D to 3D does add a level of complication. So if you're off on your own, building your own idea, I would just use pre-existing graphics from that you stored from the internet. There's tons and tons of free stuff. There's just anything you need under the sun is already just like some type of 2D graphic that you could just Google image search on and just grab it. Make your life easy. This isn't an art class. I'm not asking you to make original art assets. Just do Google image search and find whatever you need to build a prototype. All right. So in this case, I'm simulating what it means to push buttons in VR. And if you notice, as I push this button, I just taught the person the first thing. And if I push there, you see I'm moving forward step by step. But let me just restart it and let me explain what the text was. So of the major elements of this experience, we have this panel thing in the back, which has 2 panels, and it's like my major text, my major explanation to the user. And my tutorials up here, and then live during level 1 when they're in tasks, it kind of shows them how they're doing, gives them some feedback if they're right or wrong. The main interactable part of the interface is up front here. We just have a next button and a swap button. Notice that the user can't do anything. The swap button doesn't work, and the only thing that's blinking is this next button. And it says find the blinking button. It is the next button. So I know for sure that the only way the user can proceed to the next step is if they push the next button. So I mean, it's painfully slow, and just you have to reveal one thing at a time to teach them how to use an app or a game, learn something. So we have the current progress, which we're not in a task, and the goal progress, but we're not in a task, so they're empty. And just a little reminder down here that if all this looks weird and you don't know what to do, just left drag to use the hand to push down buttons. And that is the whole point of this. All right, so let me push the next button. So some new things appeared. The text waited a little bit, and then it says, hey, look, there's these 2 containers. Each container has a number of elements in them, and we need to place them in ascending order, left to right. Now, ascending order left to right was implied because I'm thinking, oh, this is a Western person English speaking, but you know what? Maybe that should have been explicitly stated. Press the blinking button to swap them. And so now I can't even hit the next button. I can't do anything. I have these containers with these interesting little objects bouncing up and down, and we have their 2D representation or just their number. If this is too abstract, then at least there's 8 objects and then 1. So we have a list of 2 elements in it. This element is 8. This element is 1. Press swap. The container swapped and the numbers swapped. So here is the actual visual representation of swapping elements in a list. And in this case, we're going to learn the bubble sort, where we swap two elements and we move, and we swap two elements and we move. So notice that the numbers moved with the containers. And I notice I'm so blatantly saying every little thing because you just don't know if people are paying attention or not. These two containers are now in correct descending order. Press next to continue, and only the next button. All right, so I pressed the next button, the containers went away. Everything was kind of grayed out, inactive. I have to let the user read, and then I let an interactive show itself. Press the next button to learn how to take number of steps taken in the sort. Sure. And down here, you may have been watching that in my console. I have a bunch of debug statements coming up. So this is super useful as a developer to put some debug statements that send you little text notices as you progress through your code, as you progress through the program, so you know where you are. You can know what actually happened successfully or not successfully. And so I know I'm moving through different phases. I know where I'm touching different buttons, or different the user is touching different interactives, and there's different phases of the app I'm moving through. In either case, now it's saying, now I'm explaining. So notice I'm teaching the user how to use my application as I'm teaching them some of those initial learning objectives. So I'm mixing the traditional tutorial of learning a piece of software, mixing the tutorial of the learning. So it's a learning software. It's educational software. So now we're looking at, notice how there's a counter that keeps track of number of steps. So this 0 appeared. A step is when you try to compare two elements to swap or not. Great. Let's move on. So the best case for bubble sort is n. Oh, it's already in ascending order. This means you cycle through the list once and you're done, and it takes n steps. So n, meaning the number of elements in the list, is n. So notice I can only fit so much text. You can't put a whole book up of text in your software, so you really have to pick and choose, and especially in VR where you might be able to just get away with a sentence or two. And you really have to pick or choose just the core of what you want to get across. And there's just additional information you just can't state. You're trying to just get at the core of it. All right, worst case is when the list is in descending order and you have to swap it over and over again. That means however many elements you have, square them. It's going to take that much time. So try to minimize the steps to complete a bubble sort. Press next to learn about duplicate numbers, or elements in a list that are next to each other that have the same numbers. So when you cross them, you come across them, you don't have to swap. So because swapping duplicate has no impact. So notice I'm just teaching them some things. Technically, this knowledge is a little bit outside of the traditional bubble sort algorithm. But it's just like these are very beginners or middle school students. I'm going to have to give them a little bit of computer science knowledge or a little additional information to make sure that it's still just everybody can cross the finish line. Everybody understands what's going on. All right, in front of you are 3 containers. Let's learn to sort a list of 3. So focus on 2 containers at a time. These 2 are in this order and don't need to be swapped. These 2 are in order. So we see we have 4, and if you don't feel like counting them up, you just look here. So we have 4 and then 8. It's already in ascending order. We're good to go. We don't need to swap. So I can go to the next one. Here we're comparing 8 to 1, right? That's not in the correct order. Let's swap. We're good to go. They're now in order, and we can return back to the beginning of the list. All right, we can swap 4 to 1. And these two are now in order, and notice the entire list is in ascending order. Right. So we have 1, 4, 8. So technically, in bubble sort, they call it bubbling up. The largest element moves all the way to the end of the list, and so you don't need to check. Once that you've moved one element all the way to the end, you don't have to check that far anymore. So actually, what you're checking shrinks and shrinks. So I should update this tutorial. And let me see if I get time to do it. I don't know. But at least the core of the algorithm is taught in this, is the fact that you're moving left to right through the list over and over again, and you're bubbling up the large elements. You're moving the large elements from left to right. And it takes a long time. And it gets the point across that some of these algorithms, sometimes they're efficient, sometimes they're not. But the computer does so many calculations, so many seconds, sometimes you don't even realize how many additional steps they're doing. But by you doing it yourself in a slow way, you do get that knowledge across to the user. Some additional feedback we got is they were confused that, wait, are you talking about the elements in the container, or the containers as elements in the list? And so that's why these numbers were put down. And so we wanted to stick with 3D graphics. And so I thought I'd show elements that have these kind of objects. You would count them. This is the number. This represents 7. This is 4. This is 1. But we did get feedback that was a confusing concept for beginners, is that they didn't know if this was, oh, there's 7 elements in here, right in here, in this list. It's like, no. This represents element 7. Or I'm saying this represents the number 7, the number 4, number 1. Each of these are an element in a list, in this case of 3. Each container is the actual element. So you have to be careful that while visualizing an abstract concept is great and with comprehension, but the visualization can be misleading in what you're trying to teach. So that's why you build something, you test it, you iterate, you build, you iterate, you build, you iterate. In this, we should move to iterate again. We should fix that the last part of the algorithm is that you don't touch, as each of the large elements get to the end of the list, you don't actually progress to that part of the list anymore. And also that the visualization should be rethought to not lead to that confusing conclusion. All right, so now we have a list of 3. Focus on remembering must. I think I've just entered task 1. I think I just completed the tutorial, and I'm free to play. So I'm going to swap those. 4, 7, we're in good order. Let's move. 7, 1, we're going to swap that. Let's go back. We're going to swap here. Yep, we're good. We're good. And what I really wanted to teach them was more important for me to reinforce correctness or proofreading. Make sure that everything is correct. And that's why I took that extra time. Yes, move through that list one extra time. Because that was a part of the algorithm that I was really teaching on. And so what we tested on was how many at each step, what numbers are you changing and why? And that's the core of the algorithm, and that's what the trainer teaches. And so this is actually working in Unity, and I think I've showed it on itch.io, but let me get that link up too. I mean, it functions just like this too. And I'll put up the link to it. Yes, I'm not a robot. All right. Yes. So here it is running on itch.io. Now this is the tutorial, and this is the level 1, which had 7 tasks in it. And this is what it looks like running on itch.io. But I have to sew it into that prototype framework that I was building last sprint. But yes, there are 7 tasks. As you notice, I'm back in Unity right now. So I've successfully sorted, and I got a perfect score. Great job. Now here's a list of 4. I wanted to show you outside of Unity because this thing grows and grows, the camera view, because this list gets really long, and so that's why it has a nice long view, a nice long frame here on itch.io. So you can see I'm starting to get cut off here, but what have you. I'll just play this one real quick. So I'm going to swap here, jump to here. And I went through the list, checked, and there you go, complete. So I just finished task 2, and we start an even larger list. Now we're on elements of 5, and I keep testing 5, 6 to 7. I think we got to like 8 elements, and through 7 tasks. And so I built each list and ordered the numbers, and I play tested over and over again to make sure that each task gets harder and harder, and then I had others play test it, and that's how I got refined how each task gets harder within the level. But now you can all see, like in my design doc, the micro interactions are dealing with these buttons and these text panels in the UI and this little list here. And the middle interactions are dealing with these containers, and the macro interactions are dealing with this whole big table that I'm standing at. In VR, it's even more prevalent because you got to move left and right through this table. So micro, the buttons, middle, the containers, and macro, the table. And then you can talk more about that in your design doc. So I think we have enough. We definitely have enough material for this week. I'll get this link up. And the core of it for you will be generating your own learning objectives, and because that's going to be your first step in building your design doc. Is going to be your first step into thinking about how to build your interactions. What type of level do you think? What type of game experience do you think you're going to build? All right, this is way more than enough material to get you going. And then I think we're going to be heavy in user interfaces and here, and I'm going to have to start diving into the code here, and then this will be probably all code, and then we're done. So I mean, this will probably be half interaction, half code, and then full code, and then we'll be good to wrap up.